My name is Gloria, and I am 34 years old from Boston. Growing up, I was always what people called a tomboy. I loved sports, the outdoors, and never fit into the girly mold my family wanted. When I became a single mom to my daughter Lily, my father said those words I will never forget. Too masculine to raise a daughter, he claimed. My entire family agreed. But years later, the way I raised her proved them all wrong. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe to hear how I showed my family that being myself was exactly what my daughter needed. I was born and raised in suburban Boston, the middle child between two brothers. From the earliest age I can remember, I gravitated toward activities my parents considered boyish. While other girls in the neighborhood played with dolls and tea sets, I was climbing trees, catching frogs in the creek behind our house, and begging to join the local Little League team. My father, James, was a traditional man who worked in construction. He had always wanted sons, and initially seemed pleased with my interests. We would spend weekends fishing at the lake, and he taught me how to bait a hook and clean a catch by the time I was 7 years old. I treasured those early memories with him, the pride in his eyes when I showed no fear of worms or fish guts, like some of my brother's friends did. That all changed when I hit puberty. Suddenly, what had been cute in a little girl became concerning in a young woman. My mother, Sarah, began a relentless campaign to make me more ladylike. She signed me up for ballet classes I hated, bought me dresses I refused to wear, and constantly reminded me that boys would never like me if I continued acting like one of them. I still remember the day of my ballet recital versus the baseball championship falling on the same Saturday when I was 12. There was never any question in my mind which one I would choose. When I showed up at the baseball field in my uniform instead of the dance studio in a tutu, the disappointment in my parents' eyes cut deeper than any scolding could have. My grandfather was the only family member who truly accepted me as I was. A veteran with a quiet strength about him, he would wink at me when the family pressure became too much and whisper, "That fire in you is going to take you places, Gloria." Extended family gatherings were exercises in humiliation. Aunts would comment on my short haircut or lack of makeup, uncles would joke about me being the son my father always wanted, and cousins who fit the feminine ideal were held up as examples of what I should aspire to be. Every Christmas and Thanksgiving became a gauntlet of judgment about my appearance and behavior. High school only intensified the struggle. While most girls were concerned with fashion and dating, I focused on academics and sports. I joined the track team, excelled in math and science, and spent my weekends hiking or mountain biking rather than at the mall. I had friends who accepted me, mostly other girls who didn't quite fit the mold, but we were definitely not the popular crowd. The pressure to conform was constant. My mother would leave fashion magazines on my bed. My father would make comments about me never finding a husband. Even teachers would sometimes suggest I try to soften my approach or appearance. But with each criticism, my determination to remain authentic only grew stronger. I refused to pretend to be someone I wasn't just to make others comfortable. The real conflicts with my father began during my junior year of high school when discussions about college and career started. I wanted to study engineering. My father thought that was too masculine a field and suggested teaching or nursing instead. Our arguments became legendary and the household voices raised and doors slammed. The once close relationship we had shared during those fishing trips felt like ancient history. By the time I graduated high school as one of the top students in my class, the rift between my father and me had grown wide. My acceptance to a prestigious engineering program with a partial scholarship should have been a moment of family pride. Instead, it became another point of contention. Was I really going to waste my youth in a male-dominated field where I would struggle to find a husband, they wondered aloud? What about having a family someday? I left for college with a mixture of excitement and relief, finally free to be myself without daily criticism. What I didn't realize was how deeply those years of judgment had affected my sense of self-worth. Despite my outward confidence, part of me still wondered if there was something fundamentally wrong with who I was. College opened up a world of possibilities for me. Suddenly, my aptitude for math and science was an asset rather than something to be hidden. I thrived in my engineering classes, often one of only a handful of women in the lecture hall. While that gender imbalance intimidated some, I was used to being the odd one out and focused on my studies with the same determination that had gotten me there. It was during my sophomore year that I met Michael. He was a teaching assistant in one of my advanced physics classes, just 2 years older and working on his master's degree. Unlike the boys I had grown up with, Michael seemed fascinated by my intelligence and confidence, rather than put off by it. Our relationship began with study sessions that gradually evolved into coffee dates, then dinner dates, and eventually a full-blown romance. Michael was tall with thoughtful brown eyes and a quiet intensity that matched my own. He loved that I could keep up with him on hiking trails and talk about astrophysics over beer. For the first time, I felt truly appreciated for exactly who I was. After graduation, we both found jobs in the Boston area, me at an engineering firm and Michael at a research laboratory. Our relationship strengthened as we built our careers side by side. He proposed on a mountain summit after a challenging hike, saying he wanted a lifetime of adventures with me. At 24, I became Mrs. Gloria Anderson, certain I had found my perfect match. The early days of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. We bought a small house with good hiking trails nearby. We spent weekends rock climbing, kayaking, or just exploring the wilderness areas around New England. Our physical connection was strong, and I finally understood what it meant to be truly comfortable in my own skin with someone else. But the pressure started almost immediately after the wedding. My mother began asking about grandchildren at every phone call. Michael's family, while more subtle, would send us articles about the best ages for having children, or mention friends whose biological clocks had run out. Even our married friends seemed to be reproducing on scheduled baby showers, becoming a monthly occurrence. I wasn't opposed to having children someday, but I wanted to establish my career first. Michael initially supported this plan, but as months turned into a couple of years, I noticed a shift in him. Small comments about traditional family structures began to appear in our conversations. He started spending more time with his colleague Brandon, who had a picture-perfect family with a wife who had given up her career to raise their children. The first real crack in our marriage appeared when Michael suggested I might want to consider a less demanding career path before we started a family. I was up for a promotion that would involve more responsibility and occasional travel. Instead of excitement for my success, he expressed concern about how that would work when we had kids. When did we decide I would be the one to sacrifice my career? I asked him during one heated argument. His response stunned me. I just assumed since you're the woman, he began before trailing off at my expression. It was as if a stranger had replaced my husband. The man who had loved my strength and independence was suddenly expecting me to transform into some 1950s housewife once we had children. Our arguments increased in frequency and intensity. I felt betrayed while he felt I was being selfish and unfeminine. Then came the devastating discovery. A misdirected text message revealed Michael had been having an affair with a woman from his lab named Sophia. Unlike me, Sophia was everything traditionally feminine. She wore dresses and perfect makeup, baked cookies for the office, and according to the messages I found, made Michael feel like a real man. The confrontation was ugly. Michael admitted he had grown to resent my personality and appearance over time. He claimed he had married me thinking I would eventually soften and become more like other wives. When I remained stubbornly myself, he had sought comfort elsewhere with someone who fulfilled his image of what a wife should be. Our divorce was finalized just 3 years after our wedding day. I moved into a small apartment, threw myself into my work, and tried to rebuild my shattered sense of self. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the infidelity, but because it confirmed my deepest fear. My authentic self was somehow unworthy of love and acceptance. For months I went through the motions of living while feeling empty inside. I stopped calling family because I couldn't bear their thinly veiled, "I told you so" comments about my marriage failing. I pulled away from friends who seemed to pity me. I questioned everything about myself. Should I grow my hair out? Wear more dresses? Speak more softly? Was there something fundamentally wrong with me? It took a breakdown in the grocery store, sobbing in the cereal aisle after seeing Michael and Sophia together to realize I needed help. I finally started therapy, beginning the painful process of rebuilding my identity and learning to value myself again. Little did I know that the biggest challenge and the greatest joy of my life was just around the corner. 2 months after my divorce was finalized, I discovered I was pregnant. The timing suggested the baby had been conceived during one of our last attempts to save our marriage. The shock was overwhelming. After years of careful birth control used, the one time we had been less careful had resulted in a pregnancy. I sat in my bathroom staring at the positive test for what felt like hours, my mind racing. A baby. A responsibility I had been planning for someday, but not like this. Not alone with a freshly signed divorce decree and an ex-husband who had already moved on. My first instinct was to call Michael. Despite everything, this was his child too. His reaction was cold and businesslike. He asked if I was sure it was his. When I confirmed the timing, he went silent before asking what I intended to do. There was no warmth, no excitement, only a thinly veiled hope that I would make this problem disappear. "I need time to think," was his final response. 3 days later, he called back with his decision. He would fulfill his financial obligations, but had no interest in co-parenting. He and Sophia were building a life together, and a child from his failed marriage didn't fit into their plans. He would sign away his parental rights if I agreed not to pursue anything beyond minimum child support. The callousness stunned me, but in retrospect, I should have expected it. The man who had betrayed me so thoroughly wasn't suddenly going to become Father of the Year. I was on my own, facing the prospect of single motherhood in my late 20s, with a demanding career and no family support system nearby. For a week, I weighed my options. Termination, adoption, single parenthood. Each path had its merits and challenges. But as I sat in a park watching families play together one Sunday afternoon, something shifted inside me. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach and made a decision. I would keep this baby and give it all the acceptance and love I had always craved myself. Breaking the news to my parents was even harder than I'd anticipated. I drove to their house one weekend, rehearsing my speech the entire 3-hour journey. They still lived in the same suburban home where I'd grown up, a place that held so many mixed memories for me. My mother cried when I told them. My father sat in stony silence, his disappointment palpable. Then came the questions. Would Michael reconsider if they knew about the baby? Had I thought about how hard single parenthood would be? Was I really ready for this responsibility? When I explained that Michael wanted no part in our child's life, and that yes, I had carefully considered my decision, my father stood up and paced the living room. Then he delivered the blow I will never forget. "Gloria, you're too masculine to raise a daughter properly," he said flatly. "What if it's a girl? She needs a feminine influence, a proper mother figure. You can't even take care of yourself properly always, with the hiking and the tools and the men's clothing. How will you teach a daughter to be a proper woman?" The words hit me like physical blows. Too masculine, improper woman, unable to mother. Every insecurity I had ever felt came rushing back with crushing force. My own father thought I was fundamentally incapable of motherhood because I didn't fit his gender expectations. What started as a pregnancy announcement quickly escalated into a family crisis. My mother called my Aunt Judith, who called my grandmother, who called my other aunts. Within days, a family intervention was organized at my parents' house. I arrived expecting Sunday dinner, only to find most of my extended family waiting with concerned expressions. One by one, they expressed their doubts about my ability to be a good mother. My Aunt Judith worried about the child being raised without religion, since I rarely attended church. My Uncle Frank questioned my financial stability as a single parent. My cousin Patricia, a mother of 3 who embodied traditional femininity, offered parenting advice that sounded more like criticism of everything I was. The worst suggestion came from my mother, who proposed that the baby live primarily with my parents. I could visit on weekends, she explained, while they would ensure the child had proper upbringing, especially if it was a girl. She presented this as a generous offer, completely blind to how deeply offensive it was. The betrayal cut me to my core. These people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were instead condemning me based on superficial traits that had nothing to do with my capacity to love a child. They could only see what I wasn't, never what I was: a successful engineer, a survivor, a woman with tremendous capacity for love despite rarely receiving it herself. In that moment of judgment, my sister Jennifer became my unexpected champion. 5 years younger than me and always more traditionally feminine, Jennifer had never experienced the same pressure I had. We hadn't been particularly close growing up, our interests too different to bridge the gap. But that day Jennifer stood up in the middle of the family gathering and silenced everyone. "Gloria will be an amazing mother," she declared firmly. "She is strong, intelligent, and more loving than any of you can see right now. This baby will be lucky to have her, and if none of you can support her, then you don't deserve to be in either of their lives." Her defense left everyone, including me, speechless. In the awkward silence that followed, Jennifer grabbed my hand and led me out of the house to her car. We drove to a nearby diner where I finally broke down all the emotions of the past weeks pouring out between bites of comfort food. "I don't know if I can do this," I confessed to her. "What if they're right? What if I can't raise a child properly, especially a girl?" Jennifer took my hands across the table. "You will do this, and you'll do it brilliantly, Gloria. Not despite who you are, but because of it. And you won't do it alone. I'm with you every step of the way." That night, driving back to my apartment, I made a promise to my unborn child and to myself. I would prove them all wrong. I would be the best mother possible, and I would do it my way. My child would grow up knowing unconditional acceptance, something I had never experienced myself. My so-called masculine traits, my strength, my independence, my resilience would become my greatest parenting assets, not liabilities. The ultrasound at 20 weeks confirmed I was having a girl. As the technician pointed out her perfect little profile on the screen, I felt no fear, only fierce determination. A daughter. My daughter. And I would raise her to be strong, confident, and free from the gender constraints that had caused me so much pain. My daughter Lily came into the world on a snowy January morning after 36 hours of labor. When the doctor placed her on my chest, our eyes met, and in that moment, everything changed. All the doubts, all the hurt, all the judgment from my family seemed to fade away. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of absolute perfection, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her minutes of life. The overwhelming love I felt surprised me with its intensity. I'd heard people talk about the bond between mother and child, but experiencing it firsthand was something else entirely. This tiny human depended on me completely, and contrary to my family's predictions, I felt more than up to the task. The early days were a blur of sleep deprivation and new challenges. Nursing didn't come easily for either of us. Lily struggled to latch, and I spent hours with lactation consultants trying to get it right. When we finally found our rhythm, it was a victory we achieved together, the first of many. My sister Jennifer stayed with me for the first 2 weeks, helping with everything from diaper changes to ensuring I ate regular meals. My mother came to visit as well, bringing homemade casseroles and unsolicited advice in equal measure. She couldn't help criticizing everything from the temperature of Lily's room to the simple gender-neutral decor I'd chosen for the nursery. The most difficult visits were from my father. He would come stand awkwardly in my living room and watch me interact with Lily as if waiting for me to make some catastrophic parenting mistake. He'd make comments about my apartment being too small or question whether the plants I kept were safe for babies. Never once did he ask to hold his granddaughter or offer a word of encouragement. When Lily was 6 weeks old, my mother came over unannounced while I was attempting to work remotely for a few hours. She found me in sweatpants, hair unwashed, baby sleeping in a carrier on my chest while I typed one-handed at my computer. The look of disapproval on her face spoke volumes. "This isn't working, Gloria," she said, gesturing around at the dishes in the sink and the laundry piled on a chair. "You need help. Real help. My offer still stands. Let us take Lily a few days a week. You can focus on your career and we'll make sure she's raised properly. The suggestion that I would hand over my daughter because my house wasn't magazine perfect infuriated me. I managed to keep my voice steady as I asked my mother to leave, telling her that unless she could be supportive of my parenting choices, her help wasn't welcome. After that confrontation, I noticed family members gradually distancing themselves. Phone calls became less frequent. Invitations to family events arrived with thinly veiled suggestions that perhaps it would be too difficult for me to attend with an infant. Even my mother, who had at least been trying in her misguided way, began to pull back. The isolation might have broken me if not for a parenting group I found through an online forum. Unlike traditional mommy groups that seemed focused on competitive parenting and gender norms, this one was specifically for unconventional families. Single parents, same-sex parents, parents who didn't fit traditional molds, all were welcome. We met weekly at a local community center, bringing our babies and our unfiltered experiences. There I found women and men who understood the challenges I faced. Amanda, a tattooed single mother with a corporate executive job. Diego, a stay-at-home dad whose wife traveled for work. Samira, a lesbian mother navigating the world with her partner and twins. These people became my tribe, offering support without judgment and practical advice without condescension. With each passing month, my confidence grew. Lily thrived under my care, meeting milestones and developing a sunny, curious personality. She was proof that my parenting approach was working regardless of what my family believed. The first time she laughed a full-bellied chuckle when I made silly faces during a diaper change, I recorded it and watched it repeatedly on difficult days, a reminder of what really mattered. But the judgment never fully disappeared. At pediatrician appointments, nurses would ask about Lily's father as if his absence was a tragedy. At the grocery store, older women would comment on how I'd have to start making myself more presentable to find a new husband, as if that was my primary goal in life. Even other mothers at the playground would sometimes give me sideways glances when I arrived in jeans and a flannel shirt instead of the yoga pants and blowouts that seemed to be the unofficial suburban mom uniform. Each criticism, each judgment, each questioning glance rolled off me more easily than the last. I was too busy witnessing the miracle of my daughter growing and too fulfilled by our connection to give much weight to outside opinions. The strength I had always been criticized for had become my greatest asset as a single mother, allowing me to power through sleepless nights and still show up fully for my daughter each day. As my maternity leave came to an end, I faced the working mother challenges head-on. I found a wonderful daycare run by a woman named Maria, who appreciated my straightforward communication style and respected my parenting choices. I negotiated a flexible schedule with my employer that allowed me to work from home 2 days a week. I created systems and routines that kept our household running smoothly despite the chaos that comes with having an infant. With each challenge overcome, each problem solved each day, survived and even enjoyed the voice inside my head that echoed my father's words, "Too masculine to raise a daughter," grew fainter. In its place came a new voice, my own voice, confident and clear. I was exactly the mother Lily needed, not despite who I was, but because of it. As Lily grew from infant to toddler, I developed a parenting approach that was uniquely mine. Unlike my parents who had tried to force me into a specific mold, I was determined to give Lily both roots and wings, a secure foundation, and the freedom to become whoever she was meant to be. I taught Lily traditionally feminine skills, because they were useful, not because they were gendered. By age 3, she could help mix pancake batter and sort laundry by color. But I also taught her to use a hammer, safely identify different birds by their calls, and throw a perfect spiral with a football sized for her tiny hands. Our weekends were filled with adventures that raised eyebrows among more conventional parents. While other mothers were scheduling princess tea parties, I was taking Lily camping, teaching her to fish in the same lake where my father had once taught me, showing her how to build a safe campfire and identify edible berries. But our life wasn't all wilderness adventures and tool usage. We also had dance parties in our living room, baked cookies from my grandmother's recipe, and spent hours reading together. I braided her hair with the same care I used when tying fishing flies, and I sewed Halloween costumes with the precision I applied to my engineering projects. My approach to emotional development differed from gender norms as well. When Lily fell and scraped her knee, I would acknowledge her pain, clean the wound properly, and then encourage her to get back up and try again. I taught her that tears were natural and nothing to be ashamed of, but also that resilience was a muscle that grew stronger with use. The playground became an unexpected battleground. I would sit on the bench watching Lily explore, climb higher than most parents allowed, and resolve her own conflicts when possible. Other mothers would hover anxiously, shooting me judgmental looks when I didn't rush to intervene at the first sign of challenge. One afternoon, a perfectly coiffed mother approached me after Lily had successfully negotiated taking turns on the slide with a boy who had been hogging it. "That was impressive," she admitted reluctantly. "But don't you worry that you're making her too assertive? Boys don't like girls who are too strong-minded." I looked at this woman with her designer diaper bag and carefully highlighted hair and felt a mixture of pity and frustration. "I'm raising her to be herself, not to be liked," I responded. "And anyone worthy of her time will appreciate her strength, not be threatened by it." The financial aspects of single parenthood presented constant challenges. My engineering salary was good, but childcare costs were astronomical, and there was zero financial support from Michael beyond the bare minimum child support mandated by the court. I took on freelance consulting projects on weekends, while Lily napped to build our savings account, determined to provide her with every opportunity possible. My career advancement slowed compared to my child-free colleagues, who could work late or travel at a moment's notice. I turned down a promotion that would have required frequent travel, choosing instead a lateral move that offered more flexibility. Some might have seen this as a sacrifice, but to me it was simply a realignment of priorities. Success meant nothing if I missed watching my daughter grow up. The most difficult moments came when Lily began asking questions about her absent father and distant grandparents. Around age 4, she went through a phase of comparing her family to others, noticing the differences. "Where is my daddy?" she asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. "Sammy at school has a daddy who picks him up every Friday." I had prepared for this question, consulting with therapists on age-appropriate honesty. "Your daddy lives far away," I explained, careful not to let my own hurt color my words. "He wasn't ready to be a father, but that had nothing to do with you. You are perfect and wonderful, and I love you enough for 2 parents. Why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa like my friends see their grandparents?" Came the inevitable follow-up question a few weeks later. This was harder to explain without introducing concepts of judgment and rejection that were too heavy for her young mind. "Sometimes families have different ways of staying in touch," I said, choosing my words carefully. "We send cards and talk on the phone, and that's the way that works for our family right now." These conversations broke my heart while simultaneously reinforcing my determination to give Lily a life full enough that these absences, while noted, didn't leave gaping holes in her development. As she grew, Lily naturally gravitated toward both stereotypically feminine and masculine interests. She loved her collection of dolls, arranging them in complex family structures and creating elaborate stories about their lives. But she was equally passionate about her building blocks, constructing towers and bridges with an engineer's precision that made me smile with recognition. I never pushed her in either direction, simply providing opportunities and following her lead. When she wanted to take ballet lessons, I signed her up and sat through endless recitals of preschoolers, mostly hopping in approximate unison. When she developed an intense interest in dinosaurs and insisted on a paleontology-themed birthday party, I created fossil excavation activities and baked a cake shaped like a triceratops. Through it all, I watched a bond develop between us that was different from anything I had experienced in my own childhood. Lily trusted me completely, not just to meet her physical needs, but to see and accept her authentic self. She brought drawings home from preschool labeled, "For my mom, my best friend." She crawled into my lap during thunderstorms, certain that I could protect her from anything scary. She imitated my mannerisms and repeated my phrases, sometimes hilariously out of context. This connection we shared became my answer to everyone who had doubted me. My so-called masculine traits, my independence, my problem-solving abilities, my physical strength, My emotional resilience had made me a better mother, not a deficient one. I could change a flat tire and kiss a boo-boo with equal competence. I could teach Lily both how to stand up for herself and how to nurture others. By the time Lily turned 5 and prepared to enter kindergarten, I looked at my confident, kind, well-adjusted daughter and felt a quiet pride. We had proven the naysayers wrong, not with arguments but with results. Lily was thriving, not despite my parenting approach, but because of it. What I didn't realize was that our greatest challenge and ultimate vindication was still to come. The crisis began shortly after Lily started 3rd grade at age 8. She had always been a social child with a small but solid group of friends, so the sudden tearfulness and resistance to going to school caught me completely off guard. After several mornings of unusual behavior, I sat her down one evening and gently pressed for answers. At first, she insisted everything was fine, but my engineering mind wouldn't accept such an obvious malfunction without identifying the cause. "You can tell me anything," I assured her, sitting beside her on her bed, surrounded by the space-themed comforter she'd selected herself. "Nothing you say will make me love you any less." Finally, the dam broke. A group of girls led by a child named Brittany had been systematically excluding Lily, making fun of her clothes, her lunch, and most painfully her lack of a traditional family. "They don't think you're a real mom," Lily sobbed. "They say you're trying to be a dad, and that's why I don't have one." The cruelty children could inflict on one another never ceased to amaze me. As I held my daughter while she cried, I felt a familiar anger rising. The same judgment that had followed me throughout my life had now found my daughter, and that was unacceptable. Together, we developed a plan. First, I contacted her teacher to make her aware of the situation. Then I signed Lily up for a kids' martial arts class that emphasized not just physical skills, but confidence building and verbal assertiveness techniques. Most importantly, we role-played responses to the bullying, practicing calm but firm boundaries. "I'd love to play with you, but I won't if you say mean things about my family," we practiced saying. "My mom is awesome just the way she is." I took a day off work to volunteer in the classroom, wanting to observe the dynamic firsthand. The ringleader, Brittany, was easy to identify, a perfectly polished child in designer clothes who held court among the other girls. I recognized the type immediately, the elementary school version of the girls who had made my own childhood difficult. The teacher was well-meaning but overwhelmed with 30 students and limited resources. After school, I requested a conference with her and the principal to discuss a more comprehensive approach to addressing the bullying. The meeting did not go as expected. While the teacher was receptive, the principal, a formal woman named Mrs. Winters, seemed more concerned with my parenting than with the bullying itself. She made comments about children from unconventional homes, often struggling to fit in, implying that the problem stemmed from Lily's family structure rather than the other children's behavior. "Perhaps if Lily dressed more like the other girls," Mrs. Winter suggested with a thin smile. "And have you considered joining the PTA? More maternal involvement might help her integrate better." The implication was clear. The problem wasn't the bullying, it was my failure to conform to traditional motherhood standards. My blood boiled, but years of navigating professional environments dominated by men had taught me to control my outward reactions. I thanked them both for their time, made a copy of the school's anti-bullying policy to take home, and left with a promise to follow up. That evening, I sat Lily down for what I considered the most important lesson I'd ever teach her. "Sometimes people will try to make you feel bad about who you are or who your family is," I explained. "But there is nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with me, and nothing wrong with our family. People who try to make you feel bad are dealing with their own problems. It has nothing to do with you." Then I taught her something my grandfather had shown me when I faced similar challenges, a simple self-defense move designed not to hurt anyone, but to create distance from an aggressor. "Stand tall," I instructed. "Look them in the eye. If they put hands on you, use this move to create space, then walk away and find an adult. You never start a fight, but you always finish it." 2 days later, I received a call from the school. Lily had used the technique when Brittany tried to push her against a wall. No one was hurt, but the school policy required suspension for any physical altercation regardless of the circumstances. When I arrived to pick her up, Mrs. Winters was waiting with a referral for family counseling. "You see what happens when children aren't given proper guidance," she said, handing me the paperwork. "Lily needs a more feminine influence to learn appropriate conflict resolution." My response was calm but firm. "My daughter defended herself appropriately after your school failed to protect her. We don't need counseling, Mrs. Winters. We need educators who don't blame victims and who understand that families come in many forms." The suspension turned into an unexpected blessing. Lily and I spent 3 days together working on a science project she'd been interested in, taking nature walks and further developing her confidence. When she returned to school, something had shifted. The bullies had moved on to easier targets, and Lily had discovered her own inner strength. Our brief peace was shattered one evening when my father showed up unannounced at our apartment. He had heard about the school incident from my mother, who had apparently been in contact with Mrs. Winters through church connections. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he declared without even greeting me, pushing past me into the living room where Lily was reading. "You're turning her into some kind of hooligan, fighting at school. This is what happens when you raise a child with no proper female guidance." "Dad," I said firmly, "not now, not in front of Lily." But years of pent-up criticism had reached a boiling point for him. He continued listing my failings as a mother. Her clothes were too boyish, our apartment was too small, I worked too much, I didn't attend church. I hadn't found a proper father figure for her. Each accusation felt like a physical blow. Lily sat frozen on the couch, witnessing for the first time the family dynamic I had tried to protect her from. I asked her to go to her room, but she refused to move, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. Finally, when he paused for breath, I spoke. "You need to leave. Now. We can discuss your concerns about my parenting when Lily isn't present, but I will not have you undermining me in my own home." This is exactly the problem, my father exploded. "You're too stubborn, too masculine in your thinking. A proper mother would listen to guidance. I'm going to talk to a lawyer about custody options. Maybe your mother and I need to petition for partial guardianship." The threat hung in the air between us, shocking in its cruelty. I felt my hands shaking as I pointed to the door. "Get out," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "And don't come back until you're ready to apologize to both of us." After he left, I found Lily still on the couch, silent tears running down her face. I sat beside her, pulling her into my arms. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I whispered. "Grandpa is wrong. So wrong." She looked up at me with those serious eyes that sometimes seemed to hold wisdom beyond her years. "You're the best mom ever," she said fiercely. "I don't care what anybody says." The incident prompted a full family meeting orchestrated by my mother, who was alarmed by my father's talk of legal action. They came to my apartment on a Saturday afternoon, my parents, 2 aunts, an uncle, and my sister Jennifer. Lily was spending the day with a friend, a deliberate choice I had made to shield her from more family drama. For nearly an hour, I listened to their concerns about my parenting. Some were delivered gently, others with brutal directness. But the message was consistent. I was failing Lily by not providing a traditional upbringing with proper gender roles. When they finally ran out of criticisms, I stood up, looked each of them in the eye, and delivered the speech I'd been rehearsing in my head for days. "You have all made your opinions very clear," I said calmly. "Now let me make something equally clear. I am Lily's mother. Not her mother with conditions, or her mother until someone better comes along, but her mother, period. I have raised a kind, confident, intelligent child who knows she is loved completely. Yes, she got suspended for defending herself against a bully, and I'm proud of her for it. Yes, our family looks different from what you consider normal, and that's perfectly fine." I took a deep breath before continuing. "From this moment forward, anyone who wants to be in Lily's life or mine will accept us exactly as we are. No more criticism of my parenting. No more attempts to make her more feminine. No more suggestions that she would be better off with different caregivers. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." The silence that followed, was broken by the sound of my apartment door opening. Lily had returned early from her playdate and stood in the doorway taking in the scene, a room full of adults with shocked expressions. Before I could speak, she marched into the middle of the group, her small face set with determination. "I love my mom," she announced. "She's the best mom in the world. She teaches me cool stuff and makes me feel brave and special. If you don't like how she takes care of me, then you don't have to visit us anymore." In that moment, watching my 8-year-old daughter stand up to an entire room of adults to defend me, I had never felt more vindicated or more proud. She was the living proof that my parenting approach worked. Strong, articulate, confident, and compassionate, exactly the qualities I had hoped to nurture in her. One by one, my family members left, most without committing either way to my ultimatum. Only Jennifer stayed behind, hugging both Lily and me tightly before departing. We didn't see or hear from most of the family for months afterward, a painful but necessary separation that gave us space to heal and grow stronger together. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that broke my heart. "Why don't they like the way you mom me?" I considered various answers before settling on the simplest truth. Sometimes people get very attached to the idea that there is only one right way to do things, especially when it comes to families. But there's actually lots of ways to be a good parent. The most important thing is that you feel loved and safe and free to be yourself. That's what makes me a good mom, not whether I look or act like other moms. She seemed to accept this, nodding thoughtfully before turning over to sleep. As I closed her bedroom door, I realized that in trying to teach her about acceptance, she had taught me something equally valuable. The opinions that truly mattered were not those of my family or society at large, but of the child who experienced my parenting firsthand every day. In her eyes, I was not too masculine to be a good mother. I was exactly the mother she needed. 4 years passed, during which Lily and I continued to forge our own path, largely separate from my extended family. We established holiday traditions that were uniquely ours. Thanksgiving meant volunteering at a local shelter before enjoying our own small feast. Christmas involved handmade gifts and a hiking trip to see frozen waterfalls, rather than formal family gatherings. My career stabilized into a senior engineering position, with the flexibility I needed as a single parent. Lily's academic and social development flourished. She maintained a small but loyal group of friends who appreciated her unique perspective and interests. Her teachers, after the rocky start in elementary school, consistently praised her critical thinking skills and leadership abilities. By 12, Lily had developed into a remarkable young person. She excelled in science and mathematics like her mother, but also showed artistic talents I had never possessed. She played soccer on a competitive team, built complex structures in Minecraft, and spent hours writing stories in a journal she kept private. She was neither traditionally feminine nor masculine, but wonderfully authentically herself, a perfect blend of characteristics that defied simple categorization. The turning point came unexpectedly in the spring of her 6th grade year. Lily's science teacher had encouraged her to enter the state science competition with a project examining water quality in local watersheds. It combined environmental science, chemistry, and engineering in a way that captured Lily's imagination completely. For weeks, our kitchen table disappeared under beakers, testing kits, and carefully labeled samples. I provided guidance when asked, but mostly watched in awe as she tackled sophisticated concepts with determination. She developed a low-cost filtration system using recycled materials that could be implemented in communities with limited resources. Her passion for the project was matched only by her methodical approach to testing and documentation. When competition day arrived, I took off work to drive her to the state university where it was being held. As I helped her set up her display, I felt a surge of pride that nearly overwhelmed me. This confident young scientist, adjusting her graphs and rehearsing her presentation, was my daughter, shaped by our unconventional family and thriving because of it, not despite it. To our mutual amazement, Lily won not just her grade division, but the overall grand prize. The judges were impressed by both the scientific rigor of her work and its potential real-world applications. A water quality expert from the university offered to mentor her in developing the project further. A local newspaper sent a reporter to interview her about her achievement. The article appeared the following Sunday, featuring a photograph of Lily standing proudly beside her project with me next to her, both of us beaming. The headline read, "Local sixth grader solves water quality challenges with innovative design." The piece detailed her scientific process, the practical applications of her filtration system, and included quotes from the judges about her exceptional presentation skills. In the middle of the article came the paragraph that would change everything. When asked about her inspiration, Lily Martinez credits her mother, engineering manager Gloria Martinez. "My mom taught me to question everything, approach problems methodically, and never give up when something seems difficult," the young scientist explained. "She showed me that girls can do anything, especially in science and engineering. I want to be just like her someday." The reporter had gone on to mention our family circumstance, briefly noting that Gloria had raised Lily as a single mother while maintaining a successful engineering career. It was a small human interest angle in an otherwise science-focused piece, but those words would have far-reaching consequences. 3 days after the article was published, my father called. His voice sounded different, tentative, almost unsure. "I saw the article about Lily," he said after an awkward greeting. "She looks so grown up. And she's done something really impressive." "Yes, she has," I replied, uncertain where this conversation was heading. There was a long pause before he continued. "I was wondering if I could come see her science project. If she's still working on it, that is. I have some experience with filtration systems from my construction days. I might be able to offer some suggestions." The olive branch was small but unmistakable. After a moment's hesitation, I accepted it. We agreed he would come for dinner that weekend, his first visit to our home in 4 years. When I told Lily her grandfather was coming, her reaction surprised me. She didn't hold grudges the way adults did, and she had only vague memories of the confrontation years before. She was excited to show him her project, and immediately began planning what she would cook for dinner, insisting on making her specialty homemade pasta with vegetables from our small balcony garden. My father arrived on time, looking older than I remembered, and carrying an awkward gift, a toolbox filled with high-quality tools sized for smaller hands. I invited him in, both of us navigating the tension of years of estrangement. Lily broke the ice, rushing to greet him, and immediately pulling him to the dining table where she'd set up a simplified version of her science project. For 20 minutes, she explained her research with contagious enthusiasm, pointing out design challenges she'd overcome and future improvements she was planning with her university mentor. My father listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and offering genuine praise. I watched from the kitchen as I finished dinner preparations, struck by the easy rapport between them, despite their long separation. When Lily mentioned her soccer team making it to the regional finals, he asked if he could come watch sometime, and her whole face lit up with pleasure. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable, with Lily carrying much of the conversation. After dessert, she excused herself to call a friend about a homework assignment, leaving my father and me alone at the table. The silence stretched between us until he finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry, Gloria." He stared down at his empty plate. "I was wrong about you. About how you'd raise her. She's extraordinary." I felt tears prick at my eyes but blinked them away. "Yes, she is. All those things I said about you being too masculine to raise a daughter properly." He shook his head slowly. Looking at Lily, at how confident and smart and happy she is, I couldn't have been more wrong. You did what I never managed to do. You let her become herself, not what you thought she should be. The apology I had longed for but never truly expected to receive hung in the air between us. I could have responded with anger, reminding him of all the pain his judgment had caused. Instead, I found myself ready to begin healing the rift between us. "She's got a soccer game next Saturday," I offered. "If you'd like to come." It wasn't instant forgiveness, but it was a start. My father nodded, a smile breaking through his serious expression. "I'd like that very much." Over the following months, a cautious reconciliation began. My father attended Lily's soccer games, sitting somewhat awkwardly beside me on the sidelines, but cheering enthusiastically for her team. My mother reached out next, calling to ask if she could take Lily shopping for a science camp wardrobe. I agreed with the explicit understanding that Lily's choices would be respected whether they aligned with traditional gender expectations or not. By Lily's 13th birthday, most of the family had found their way back to us on our terms. My Aunt Judith brought her youngest daughter to one of Lily's science demonstrations at the community center and left visibly impressed. My Uncle Frank offered to teach Lily woodworking, a skill he'd previously only shared with his grandsons. Even my cousin Patricia, once the model of traditional motherhood, admitted that her own daughter had started struggling in school and asked for my advice on building academic confidence. The most moving moment came at Lily's birthday dinner, a small celebration at our favorite restaurant with my parents and sister in attendance. After the cake was served, Lily stood up and made an impromptu speech that left us all in tears. "I'm really happy everyone is here today," she said, looking around the table. "I know there were some hard feelings before, but I think families should stick together even when they disagree. Mom taught me that you can love people and still stand up for what you believe in. She never said anything bad about any of you, even when you weren't talking. She just kept teaching me to be strong and kind at the same time. I think that's the best thing anyone can learn." My father wiped his eyes openly, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Your mother is the strongest person I know," he told Lily. "And you know what? That strength made her a better parent than I ever was." It took me too long to see that. The healing wasn't perfect or complete. Certain relatives still kept their distance, uncomfortable with our non-traditional family dynamic. Occasional comments still slipped through about Lily benefiting from more feminine influences or me needing to find a husband. But the difference now was that these comments no longer had the power to wound me. I had the ultimate validation in the thriving, confident young person Lily was becoming. As I tucked away memory books and congratulation cards from Lily's birthday, I reflected on our journey together. The words that had once cut so deeply too masculine to raise a daughter had lost their sting entirely. My strength, my independence, my practical skills, my logical thinking, all the traits that had been criticized as too masculine, had become my greatest assets as a mother. I had not needed to change who I was to be a good parent. Instead, I had broken the cycle of conditional acceptance that had damaged my own childhood. Lily was growing up knowing she was loved completely for exactly who she was free to explore, any interest, develop any talent, express any aspect of her personality without fear of rejection. In the end, I hadn't proved my family wrong through arguments or confrontations, but through the simple, powerful evidence of my daughter herself, a living testament to the success of being raised with unconditional love and acceptance. I am a mother, not despite who I am, but because of who I am, whole and complete with all my strengths and flaws. And that is more than enough. Have you ever had to stand up against family expectations to be true to yourself or your parenting style? Share your story in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more authentic stories about breaking cycles and finding your own path. Remember, the traits others criticize may turn out to be your greatest strengths. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to be authentically yourself in all aspects of life.